Well, stimulus checks that were distributed during the pandemic had large positive impacts on financial insecurity. We have Patrick Cooney, Director of Economic Mobility at University of Michigan's Poverty Solutions Initiative, here to discuss the results of a study that showed the impact of stimulus. So, Patrick, I'm curious to know if you can just highlight for everyone, just briefly, some of the data that you guys saw from that study. Just how much of an impact did those stimulus checks make?
Yeah, so we've been tracking material hardship in U.S. households from the start of the pandemic up until now, and we're using this survey from the U.S. Census called the Household Pulse Survey, which asks U.S. households about food insufficiency and their ability to pay rent and household bills and things like that. And what we see is that following the December COVID relief bill, and then again following the American Rescue Plan passed in March, you see dramatic declines in material hardship experienced by U.S. households, to the tune of 40% drop in food insufficiency for households with children, and roughly the same drop in kind of our measure of financial instability. So really just an amazing and dramatic sign that these stimulus checks and expanded unemployment insurance are going an awful long way to support U.S. households during the pandemic.
When you look, though, at the scale of the stimulus, a little under $600 billion, were the benefits worth the cost? Some people some critics are pointing to the fact that it has ballooned our deficit, that some of that stimulus kept people on the sidelines, not wanting to return to the workforce even when they were able to. What have we learned perhaps from this time that we can take with us for, I dare say, the next time?
Yeah. So what's interesting about this is the scale of the recovery of the relief efforts have not only supported individual households, but it's supported the overall U.S. economy. As you remember, coming out of the housing crisis, the recession lasted many years after the crisis because there was sort of insufficient stimulus, there's insufficient consumer demand. And what we see throughout the pandemic is that not only do the stimulus checks and the expanded unemployment insurance, not only is it supporting individual households, but consumer spending rose back to pre-pandemic levels after the first couple of months of the pandemic, and they've pretty much stayed there. And a lot of that's been driven by folks who are unemployed being able to keep up their household spending. So, I think my response to that is that we're in a much better position for a strong economic recovery than we have been in previous recessions because of the robust response. And, and you see that, I think a lot of people are talking about, are workers coming back to the labor market fast enough? If you look at the overall job growth, this has been more accelerated than in past recessions. And, and again, I think that, we'll see what the next jobs report holds. But I think we're going to continue to see workers coming back again as we get a handle on the crisis. I think throughout, public health has been kind of our best weapon, our best economic weapon.
Now, Patrick, Alexis was just, talking about the things that we could learn and prepare for, if there is another time that we experience a shock to the economic and financial systems like we have over this past year. But I'm curious to know if there's any learnings from this pandemic that we can take moving forward, even without a crisis of some sort, a huge economic catastrophe happening, just because there were so many people that were struggling even prior to the pandemic, when the economy, by all accounts, was doing incredibly well, unemployment at its lowest levels, salaries on the rise. Still, we had so many people that were struggling. And it seems as if some of these stimulus checks really just prevented them from further backsliding. So are there any lessons that we should really be taking about the economic stimulus to apply moving forward to some of, the country's folks that are struggling the most economically?
Yeah, absolutely. I think that one kind of real, sign of progress is, this summer, we're going to see the effects of the expanded child tax credit. So a large share of U.S. households with children are going to be receiving monthly payments to help kind of shore up financial stability on a monthly basis to help defray some of the costs of raising children. Now, this is something that's seen in wealthy developed nations across the world, and the U.S. is kind of just starting down this pathway. And like you said, hardship is high, even in kind of quote unquote normal times. And so I think this is going to go, this type of program where we're providing cash to U.S. households to use as they see fit to defray sort of cost of living expenses will go an awful long way to shoring up stability for U.S. households. And then in addition, the expanded unemployment insurance, for the first time in a long time, has provided workers with a bit more bargaining power than they've had in a while. And so there's a lot of talk now about, in leisure and hospitality industries having to raise wages to attract workers. That's a net good thing. Wages have been so low for so long for many low-paid workers that if this relief package sort of puts workers in a better bargaining position to get higher wages going forward, that's a great outcome going forward.
All right, Patrick Cooney from the University of Michigan's Poverty Solutions Initiative. Thanks so much for joining us.